wanted to step back and think about what's happening in the world of finance, not in the context of individual companies or technologies, but rather the kind of shifts that are taking place and what those shifts mean, to try and see whether we can understand how to respond as a result. People use terms like cloud and mobile and social and open. We've heard all of them. I want to give you a different perspective on them and then concentrate on just 4 words: risk, trust, liquidity, and access. Because I'd rather think about those and what they mean as a result of the changes in technology than to sit and give you individual corporate pitches. So first, let's start with some of the technology background. Right? The word cloud to me means nothing more than an ability to scale up or down. We didn't have it in the past. It meant that anything that is a cloud service, by definition, should not require you to have to predict capacity in advance and fix that capacity. If you're in a position to be able to have fungible sort of access to any form of asset, particularly an infrastructure asset, then that's what cloud represents. Because you don't have to know in advance how much you need to be able to do something, right? It switches from a CapEx to an OpEx kind of mindset, but the premise of cloud is nothing more than extreme flexibility. Okay? Anyone comes to you and talks to you about it, you can forget everything else. When you're trying to innovate in finance, only think of cloud as the ability to provide you extreme flexibility, usually in infrastructure. When it comes to mobile, again, the word means many things to many people, but what it means to me in the world of finance is an ability to do 2 things: shifts place and shift time. Okay? Let me explain that. When I started work, if someone left me a message, I'm old. I'm the wrong side of 55 or the right side, depending on which way you look at it. But when someone left me a message, it would be a piece of paper left on my desk. And if I didn't go to my desk, I didn't see it. A little while later, when I said, I never saw that message, someone had to cover their ass. So they invented a pad with a carbon copy to say, I did leave you that message, I did, because they kept a copy of the message with them. A little while later, something that looked like a tape recorder got attached to my phone, and it would flash randomly numbers between 0 and 5 to tell me somebody had called and left a message. But I had to physically be at my desk to listen. A while later, I could query that by calling in to my own number and saying, I can play back a message. And by the early 1990s, the idea of what we call voicemail today was there. 2 things happened, right? Voicemail is the easiest example of what mobility represents to me. 1, it allowed you to TiVoize a part of your life. You could record something and play it back later. And that is true in every part of finance. Whenever you want to think, mobility represents the ability to TiVoize a transaction, a conversation, because it could be asynchronous. You didn't have to physically be there at the same time, because it gave you the ability to record something and to replay it later. None of my children watch television with anything that looks like a program guide. Okay? It's irrelevant to them. They choose when they want to watch. They choose what they want to watch. So it should be with many of the things we do in engaging with finance, to say, in your time, and the in your time is just an outcome of the growth of technology to be able to record it and to replay it. It does mean that you need the design capability of tagging it, being able to have this semantic understanding of what it represents, because it's like any other filing system. If you don't know what you called it, it's fairly hard to find later. But that's only shifting time. Mobility also allows you to shift place, because the coming together of telecoms with computing meant that you are now in a position to say, I don't even have to be co-located. I don't have to be contiguous. I can query this from wherever I am. So the early users of people with mobile services, like with the BlackBerry, right? Why did we use terms like synchronize? Because wherever you are, you had to signal to home base, to the mothership. Can you make me look as if I was there and the time is now? Okay? So when people use terms like shifting time and space, it sounds like so much theory. But the simple fact is you needed to have technology to be able to say, can I record it and replay it later? And can I do it from wherever I am? So that's all that mobility means to me. Park that. Social is about filtering. Okay? We may have a million reasons to talk about why I share. You know, I had breakfast, I checked in at this place, I went to the loo, too much information. Whatever it is, the most important elements of social are actually to do with saying, if everything in the world is capable of becoming a sensor, if everything in the world is capable of sharing status under given thresholds, if you can subscribe to anything, then you need some ability to filter it. Okay, Clay Shirky, one of my favorite professors, said, there is no such thing as information overload, there is only filter failure. Okay? So we have to start looking at how, in given a fire hose, we have to be able to filter information. That filtering takes place through the best possible means. People who already know you, know your interests, know the profile of what you represent, and are in a similar context to be able to signal to you what is important and what is not. So what we see in social networks as the RTs or retweets, the plus ones, the likes, these are all ways of people voting what is important. People choosing an at message or sending something to you, either publicly or privately through what they call a DM or a direct message, are saying this is so important that I want not for it to pass across your radar screen or horizon. I'd like you to take a look at it personally. And if you need serendipity within that, because otherwise, because these things are subscriber-based networks. You see, one of the big differences between social networks and mail is broadcast-driven. All the power in mail is in the hands of the sender. All the power in social networks is in the hand of the recipient. So I choose who I follow. And if I don't follow you, I'm not going to listen to you whatever you do. You can dance, you can strip on stage, I still won't listen to you. So social then becomes a way of signaling what is important, making that personal to me, usually by a network of people who know something about me. In the old model, finding out the opinion of people who mattered to you was expensive. So you chose a proxy for being able to get recommendations. That proxy was celebrities. But you then got the celebrity sort of soup to nuts. So it became a bit of a quandary because you wanted to, I want people to say, one person says, I like JP's food taste and I hate JP's music taste. The person next to him says, I like JP's music taste and I hate his food taste. Both are right because it's a question of liking a taste, right? It is completely qualitative. But instead, I would have to say, yes, I like Tiger Woods' choice of golf ball, okay? Maybe I even like his choice of financial advisor. Do I like his way of handling his marriage? Probably not. Okay? So the idea that a celebrity endorsement is across all asset classes doesn't make sense. We need to be able to tune in more granularly. What we see as social is about recommendation. Recommendation from people we trust about things they know we're interested in, so there's some domain interest, possibly even some domain knowledge amongst the two. Okay? Finally, open is about future-proofing. Okay? Open, the best example I can give you what openness actually represents is a guy called Cary Fowler. Okay? This guy did something insane. He collected seeds, and he created a seed bank underneath the permafrost near the North Pole. And he would collect all these seeds that would otherwise have gone extinct, as it were. And I met him and sort of said, what's this? Shouldn't natural selection mean Some things go, other things come, mutation takes place. They let the fast survive, as it were, or the one that adapts the most. Why do you want to hold on to things that don't adapt? And he said, well, the adaptation, the reason why something didn't fit may be because the environment conditions weren't right. But if you freeze it, there may come a time when the environmental conditions are right for it, and we can speed up evolution by having access to the seed bank. And that reminded me, I'm now tying this back to your world in a way, of what happened when we designed services for ATMs, okay? In the early to mid-1980s, lots of banks spent lots of money putting billing services onto ATMs. So this was the use case. On a Saturday afternoon, someone is going to stand in a queue in traditional English weather of heavy rain and cricket matches being called off and people trying to have strawberries at Wimbledon while rain stopped play there as well. And in the middle of that, you're going to queue up and hunch over a cash till trying to pay a bill. Yeah, why would you do that? Okay, but people didn't throw that code away. They called it wrong, and all the code that was built for things that you would do that never got done when people queued up at a cash till, when the web came along and now said, in your place and in your time, would you like to carry through these services? Everybody queued up. Suddenly, the same services that were irrelevant in the context of the automated telemachine on the high street became immensely valuable for a service on the web at home in your own time. And this time and place thing is important, right? As a child, the worst nightmare for me was being told, would you like to go next door and see next door's holiday photographs? Okay, God help me from that kind of time, when you all get dragged along and we're going to see somebody else's holiday photographs. Well, guess what? Along comes Flickr, along comes Facebook, and that's what we do. But the difference is we choose the time and place. And this ability to shift time and place and fit into it is a material change. Now, that was a quick run-through of social, mobile, open, and cloud as some of the drivers. I now want to talk about it in the context of finance. First and foremost, risk. To me, risk has always been not uncertainty, but risk because it's based on data. It's based on information. It's based on the quality of information you can collect. And it's based on being able to standardize that, understand it, get insights from it, be able to act from it. We live in an age where we have never been able to collect as much information as we have today. Okay? Almost everything we do is able to be auto-date and time-stamped, geolocated, associated with a verified identity, friend groups known, and these are not trivial. Again, taking an aside from another industry, people use social logins, okay? And the idea of social logins didn't make sense to a lot of people. I can buy tickets from Ticketmaster saying, hang on a second, this is me, I have a login there. Or I can buy it saying I use Facebook Connect. What is the difference? Well, I tried it. And the difference is, now when I buy a ticket from Ticketmaster, I know which of my friends are going to the same concert because I have exposed my friend graph to them. If I so choose and they so choose, we can even try sitting next to each other or as far away from each other as possible. Depends on the friends and depends on the concert. Okay? But the point is, it's not that you're making money for Facebook or some other network when you share your social graph. You could turn around and say, in financial circles, which of your friends have acquired this product? Which of your friends has been interested in this and been prepared to share it? Because sharing is always important. But going back to risk, if risk is based on having better information, right, the ability to get to that information, the ability to be able to, the search cost, the discovery cost for it matter. In a number of European countries, we now have started seeing self-insuring of things that are not life products, okay? Motor and general insurance. 50 friends can get together and say, we know that we are of a similar type or size or scale. We know each other. Why do we want to go pay an insurance premium for our cars. It's cheap to find out from each other what our last 10 years' history was, because a social network takes minutes to resolve that. Why don't we self-insure? We collect premium and we'll manage to pay out claims. And the only response that some of the insurance companies have is to expose themselves by saying, you know something, we've built a really expensive infrastructure to do those things. Why do you want to rebuild it? You can use us to provide the framework. But the reason that's possible is, like I can find out the opinions of my friends quickly, my cost for finding out about 50 friends who want to do something similar has become that much cheaper. Finding common groups, being able to standardize, being able to communicate, being able to persist that communication, all that is cheaper. So across the spectrum of saying, there are some companies that are now, regardless of where the legality of it goes and the privacy of it goes, people are pricing payday loans based on behavior within social networks as a kind of early warning about what the person's behavior would represent. Okay? When I was young, offices used to be full after Christmas of photographs of posteriors meeting photocopiers. But those pieces of paper somehow got lost. Now, those sort of incidents get persisted. So you can talk about reputational risk as a result, but at least you're talking about risk. Okay? Our ability to collect information, both in the public domain and through informed consent, in order to make better decisions, is that much greater because of the drive of so many people being always on, ubiquitously connected. Okay? That creates a voice, but it also creates a value. There's one other element to that. Historically, most of our businesses have been run on past predicts the future. Okay? It was very, very expensive to find out what a customer was doing. So we never looked at what customers wanted to do or did. We only looked at the history. Okay? In fact, the industry I joined was called transaction processing because that's all we did, process transactions. The reason for that was the infrastructure required to record what a customer was doing was very expensive. Roll forward 20-odd years now, every one of you has recording equipment in your hands. So what happens? The first thing that happens is we learn to express ourselves in what we are doing, and that's when the too much information comes in. But after a while, what actually comes out of it is auto-geolocated, date time-stamped, identity verified, compressed context through shortened URLs, and semantic analysis through the use of hashtags. Very rich information, contextually secure and embedded so that more insight can be gained, shareable within just 140 characters. Okay? That's a big deal because now I can start playing with tense. Rather than just the past tense of this is what I did, customers started sharing what they are doing. More valuable information to make decisions on. And 7 or 8 years of that, and we moved into a world where what Doc Searles calls intention signals is aware. I am now sharing what I plan to do. Okay? How much more valuable is it to start building business models not just on past behavior and current activity, but on plans, on intentions? If you don't fix my broadband, I'm changing supplier tomorrow. I'm thinking of going on holiday to Greece. Is the political climate stable enough? I want to buy an iPhone 5. Has the mapping problem been fixed? People are signaling intent through their conversations. And that is much, much richer than just analyzing past predicts the future. Because as Steve Jobs said, the past doesn't have any dots to connect to tell you where the future is. Okay? Just looking into the past is never going to create the innovations and the disruptions and the transformations. When you move on from risk to trust, all this talk about so much information and the ability to collect it, trust is actually based, I've always believed, and you can correct me or a much more erudite group, that trust has nothing to do with money. Okay? Bankruptcy has nothing to do with money either. Bankruptcy is a breakdown of trust first and everything else later. The word bankrupt comes from the Lombardy bankers who used to meet together sitting on benches. And if one of them didn't keep their word, The bench was picked up and broken in half and said, you don't have a place at this table. That banco was rutto. The bench was ruptured. So the relationship broke down. Trust has always been about the relationship. When you then play it back to the data, the issue is, as Salesforce, what's my job? Is to make sure that the data that you leave with me, I look after and return it to you in at least as good a shape as you left it with me, preferably better shape. We're in the business of trust. Every financial institution in some form or shape is in the business of trust by saying, what are you going to deposit with me that I can look after and make it better than you gave it to me in the first place? Which brings me on to the third piece, which is to do with liquidity. None of these things matter. You're not going to be able to get the data you want in order to be able to manage the risk better, nor can you build the trust frameworks unless there are enough people. Okay? Liquidity is a critical element of being able to to know that what you're doing is of value. Well, in many of the markets that we were in, there were almost no conversations between provider and buyer. Okay? Or the conversations were difficult, particularly in retail environments. It was a broadcast model. This is what we'll tell you. I remember going to a retail bank in the early 80s. 85% of the space was some stuff that happened on the other side of the wall. The 15% of space smelt like the same cologne they used in phone boxes. A bit of last night's sick with a little bit of something else in it. It was usually damp, and it was a privilege for you to have access to your own cash. Okay, that was the retail bank of the early 80s. The insurance company, why are you bothering us? Okay, how dare you possibly make a claim based on some policy you took out with us? Next thing, you're going to expect us to pay you. Okay, and all these things had huge frictions in the way. The conversation was never there, but now the customer has moved. Customers are being able to mutualize. Customers are being able to avoid the bottleneck structures. But one of the ways you're going to be able to attract them is to encourage them to amplify the times they are happy. So now it comes to sharing, again, to saying, I just changed my motor insurance. Right? How often do you see a little F or a T to say, would you like to share this on Facebook? Would you like to share this on Twitter? I'm not interested in selling Facebook or Twitter. I'm just saying that it's important, particularly for institutions and environments where touch points are rare, to start increasing the number of touch points that exist by allowing people to share with their friends what they do when they engage with financial institutions. And we don't do enough of this. If, as an insurance company, you really need to think. As a bank, you really need to think. Because you start seeing the value of that sharing by seeing outcomes you could not have predicted. Some years ago, I started sharing with the idea that I will share so long as I can figure out how it's going to be useful to somebody else. Well, I was wrong. The right model of sharing is sharing as long as you know that it will not harm somebody else. Because none of us is as smart. David Weinberger said, the smartest person in the room is the room. Okay? I can't be as smart as the room, so why do I want to predict how something's going to get used? So an example, I just bought tickets for Cat Stevens. He's playing the same music as he played in 1971. 3 days later, I got a tweet from someone I've never met who said, I've been waiting 6 months to figure out what to buy my wife for her 50th birthday. Now she has a surprise trip to London and a concert for her favorite artist. Now, I could not have predicted it. In a similar way, analysis of sharing of purchases has created an unusual outcome. You can share two ways. A directed share to say, JP thinks Uday should read this. So you see something in your mailbox. The undirected share is, JP bought this. Right? The conversion rate for the undirected share is as high as the conversion rate for the directed share. Why? Because people don't feel threatened. The undirected share gives you like gift marketing, the ability to check what's going on for yourself. The fourth and final piece I want to talk about when trying to give you a different perspective on risk, on trust, on liquidity, is actually on access. Okay? I love 60s and 70s music. I never thought it would mean that the musicians I listened to were in their 60s and 70s, but that's part of life. I was meant to be at Neil Young yesterday. I couldn't make it. I hope to be at Leonard Cohen on Friday and with Jethro Tull in 2 weeks' time. Okay? That tells you my age. But I listen to music on vinyl through valve amplifiers. And when I speak to my children, the first thing they say is, Dad, I can't share it. So to a new generation, sharing is part of the value proposition of engaging in an activity. And I understand that, okay? In India, when I used to walk home from school or college, I'd find people, and when I found people I wanted to spend time with, I'd say, come over, have a meal. And they came home, somehow magically, at the back of the kitchen, the meal expanded. Okay? I don't know what magic my mother did, but we never ran out. I come to England, and I play the same trick on my wife, and she says, we're having steak for dinner. Okay? You have to design to share to be able to make sharing possible. You have to design for access. If you want to take advantage of the increased data that is there because everyone's connected, if you want to create value from that by giving the trust of being transparent and open about what's happening to that data, if you want to be able to increase the liquidity, the viral effects of people being able to join, you also have to give them the tools to be able to share what they're doing. Sharing comes by design. So you're going to continue to see over the next few days from all kinds of organizations. Today, for me, wasn't going to be about giving you chapter and verse on individual companies or technologies. But if you understand the underlying drivers of cloud, open, mobile, and social, if you understand the implications for risk, for liquidity, for trust, and for access, then you're going to be able to reimagine your environment in ways you couldn't have otherwise. Thank you for your time.